Let's turn the light up a little bit. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to United versus Everybody, the Manchester United fan channel that is built by you guys, powered by you guys, and honestly just grown by you guys. This channel is up to over 1,200 subscribers now. The community is growing, and I couldn't be more thankful. It's all down to you. We are on the road to 2K. I am your host, Sean. I'm excited to be here, excited to stop by again to get your thoughts on what I think is a very important topic. Obviously, everyone's going to have differing opinions on all facets of football, whether it's what makes a good player, what makes a good striker, what's most important for a club, an identity, making money, youth. It's all over the place. Every level of this game is scrutinized and has opinions based on everything, top to bottom. And so with that in mind, and with all the big talk going on, right, I wanted to get your thoughts on a big topic today. So Danny B already in the chat, my guy holding down the fort. So as discussions about managers this week, specifically Tenhag, come up, discussions about managers are not new in football, right? I mean, it's part of the game, just like analyzing players or tactics or even scrutinizing ownership and transfers, right? The scouting involved. From tactics to personality, though, managers live in a fishbowl. You really don't get to hide in football. They're subjected to nonstop pressure, scrutiny, criticism, and sometimes praise too when things go right. Well, it's a rough job to be a manager, but it is the job. It's the nature of the job, that pressure. If you're not feeling the pressure, you might not be in the right job, right? There's almost no upside to management. Wins are quickly forgotten, especially when that next loss arrives, right? No one remembers like what Ten Hag did last season winning the FA Cup. It's just, oh, we lost to Liverpool. No one cares about that anymore. To a degree, I understand. I hear both sides to that. And when you lose, and it's the manager's fault, right? Even if it's not the manager's fault, the manager still bears the responsibility. And more often than not, with that in mind, the manager is the one to face the music and get the axe after a poor season, or even after a string of poor results in a given season, whether, honestly, again, if he's fully responsible or not. We all remember Jose Mourinho at Manchester United. And yes, I'm not Jose Mourinho's biggest fan in terms of his personality, but the club chose the players over the manager in Mourinho's case. And so that's an instance of that being the case. Don't feel too bad, though, for managers. Like, they all get a massive severance when they get the sack, and they're back managing within a year or so. So it's not like it's the end of the world for them, right? It's not like when some guy, somebody who's not making a ton of money is working, paycheck to paycheck, loses their job. This is manager. They're getting multi-million-dollar payouts. So anyway, as we talk about today's topic, there are already a few shouts for some managers throughout football to be getting the sack, again, such as Erik ten Hag. Go check out my video on that. And I put the link in the description on whether or not Erik ten Hag is a bad manager. But all this talk has got me thinking and revisiting something, like a topic of conversation that I've brought up a couple times. Just what exactly is a good manager? What's most important to you in a manager? What traits do you prioritize? What characteristics do you put higher on the totem pole? Today, I want to go through a few criteria that I've kind of come up with on my own, and you can feel free to add your own as well. But I want to see where you kind of place these criteria in your own personal hierarchy when it comes to what makes a manager good or not. Along the way, we're going to look at a few legendary gaffers to see some examples that fall into these categories. And then maybe we can judge who meets the certain criteria as we go through them, and which I'm going to do as well. Of course, as we do this process, everybody's going to have their own kind of preferences, similar again to how some people like center backs. Some people think center backs need to be fast. Some people think center backs need to be able to read the game. No one's right or wrong. It's down to the system, down to the manager, sometimes down to the league. It's everything. So who's to say how many of today's criteria are even needed, are important or not? But we're going to go through them anyway. So before we get stuck in, hit the like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Afterwards, if you want to go watch a little bit about my thoughts on Ten Hag's, is he a good manager? Is he a bad manager? That link is in the description as well. So here are my criteria that we're going to go through today, and I'll flesh these out. In no specific order, we've got style of play and tactics, right? And then next up is results and trophies, vibes and personality slash, you could say, man management and like player relationships are in there. Um, rebuilding a squad slash promoting youth, getting the most from players, and then also being adaptable in a crisis. Longevity at the top level is up there. How long have you sustained your status as a manager and kept winning things? And then finally, innovative and kind of changing the sport from a certain point onwards. Basically being a very big impact on the way the sport is on and off the pitch. So you let me know as we go along if I missed any. Get your thoughts in as we're going through. We are going to get started here. Let's start off with style of play and tactics. This is a pretty important one, obviously. Not only does this mean like formations and your overall system and philosophy, but it also can include, how a manager impacts a game through team selection, through substitutions, through opposition analysis, setting up against certain opposition. Now, I don't feel like you need to chalk and change every single opponent that you play. I do think, though, that like against some opponents who play a certain system and they're very successful in that system, but that system has vulnerabilities, it behooves you to maybe consider setting up to suit that. And again, impacting from subs, being able to change a game is part of this too. We remember like all these United side, I think it was either 2021, somewhere around then, like we had scored the most goals from substitutions in the league, like by a country mile that season. That shows able to change the game. So when you think of managers who've got a recognizable and effective style of play, solid, innovative tactics, who comes to mind for you? For me, probably going to think of, hey, Nick, how you going? Danny B and Nick in the chat, my two guys here. When you think of managers with a solid tactic, solid style of play, solid system, I think one of the first things you're going to think of is Johan Cruyff and his total football, right? Either Ajax or Barcelona. I think that you're also going to remember Pep Guardiola kind of bringing that possession-based, tiki-taka really kind of bringing that mainstream. Jurgen Klopp's very, very, very dominant use of the counter press, the gegenpress, that heavy metal football, if you want to call it, springs to mind as well. It's these managers, when you think of, system, or maybe reverse, think of the manager, you kind of automatically associate a tactic or a system with that, right? It's just who it is. So anyway you slice it, though, having a clear style of play and coachable tactics, so you want to be able to implement those. That brings an identity to a club. It kind of encompasses what this club is. And effective tactics, when they're good tactics, when you have a good system, they serve as a foundation and really springboard the first steps towards lifting a trophy. Whether soon or later. Jurgen Klopp took a while. Pep kind of got on the right foot. Arguably, like we talked about the other day, that City side was prepping for Pep long before he got there. But you get what I mean. Need to be able to articulate your vision to believe it and buy into it, and then implement it on the pitch. We've seen everybody who comes onto that pitch for Man City under Pep buys into the system. It was the same with Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. They had the depth, they had the longevity there. They've been at the club for a while, so the system was top to bottom implemented in that whole squad. Anybody who came in, you couldn't really recognize a drop in quality or anything because everybody was in it. What about managers, though, who win trophies, but maybe whose tactics aren't, tactical? Maybe do you have any of those managers that come to mind? Some people put Jose Mourinho in that category, right? Because it's just simply park the bus, counterattack football. I think that as your system, as if that's your system, I'm not a big fan. I think that it's a tactic and it can be used. I don't think that necessarily it's something I would want to build my whole club and system around, but that would be an example that some people probably use as far as that goes. What about managers with amazing tactics, but like little to no silverware to show for it? Does any of those managers come to mind? Is anybody known for having really good tactics, but just hasn't been able to get it over the line yet? Let me know what you think. When you think, maybe what are your other examples when you think of managers with tactics, systems, and things? Who pops in your mind? And let me know how important that is for you. Is that top of your list? Is that not top of your list? We'll move on to the next one. So next, we're going to look at vibes and like personality. And this is where you get managers who perhaps embody the club, possess some charisma on the touchline, charisma in front of the camera, and just seem to keep fans and the media, even to a degree, on side, like no matter what. It's just hard to not like these guys, right? It's all just everybody's pumping up. They're like their own hype team. They're doing it, right? And here I think of Jurgen Klopp, not so much the last couple of years at Liverpool, but for a while, like everybody was all over Jurgen Klopp. Everybody loved Jurgen Klopp. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and especially in that first season at United, it was all vibes. We went on that winning streak. We knocked out PSG in the Champions League. It's hard to hate Ole, right? It's like Juan Mata. It's hard to dislike Juan Mata, like at all. I would argue Sir Alex as well. Sir Alex always just had that personality. It was difficult to dislike him. It was difficult as a fan to not trust and back him, right? Because it always just seemed like he was a step ahead. He knew what he was doing. Those guys just have a knack for getting the fans on board week in, week out, through moments of magic on the pitch, through exciting attacking play, dramatic moments, dramatic wins, whatever you want to call it. It just always seems to it's like this drama. It's like a Greek drama. There's catharsis involved. There's this emotional wave that you ride with these managers. It's hard to put a very like articulable definition on it, but it's vibes. That's the best way. And that's not saying vibes like social media says, where it's all just happy. Vibes is in like it's emotional. Their likability, their ability to motivate and get people on side, it's contagious. Again, it makes it difficult for a fan base to disengage, to even turn on these managers sometimes. Sometimes even despite poor results, some people are just still going to stick with them. It helps, though, to pick up wins, right? Ultimately, you do need to start winning games. Ole, in particular, had a knack for getting United to score these counterattacking goals. We were putting up a lot of goals. Remember that? Those 9 goals we put past Southampton. He was able to overcome kind of going down a goal, orchestrate these wins on the day. Sir Alex did it too. So, like, again, the win against PSG to knock them out of the Champions League springs to mind. I was almost late for a client that day because we went in extra time. And we got that late handball penalty, and I was waiting to see that. And then Rashford steps up and takes it. That was Rashford's first penalty for this club too, by the way, and he put that away. Sir Alex in the 1999 Champions League final is another example. Overcoming, being down a goal to come back and score 2 late winners on these set pieces. I mean, that's incredible. And it's not easy. And that's why I've listed in here is just that way to find those ways to get people on side, to get to maintain the emotional engagement of fans, of media, of the footballing world. That's a big deal. Sticking with me so far. So next on my list is man management and player relationships. A lot of people really like it when you just know how to engage, how to work and manage players, not only on a collective level, but on an individual level as well, because we're so different. Each player requires different encouragement, different challenges, different just person-to-person interpersonal skills. This is how a manager really engages and coaches his players on that level. This entails looking at players as people, not just as players, taking an interest in their lives on and off the pitch, checking in with their families, making sure they're set up with everything, being available if the players want to be able to talk. Now, obviously there's boundaries there. You don't want to get too close, but you want to make sure that, you can handle each situation as it comes up. And this is how you learn how to coach each of them differently, depending on who they are and what their personality is like. So Alex was very, very good at this. He knew when to challenge some players, which players needed to have an arm put around them. He knew how to motivate and push players to fight by like benching them for a couple games, to get them hungry, to get them angry even. Like Sir Alex was a master at this. He was Sir Alex famously equated management with psychology in his biography. Some players can be challenged again, while others may need an arm around the shoulder. Like I said, it's difficult to know which, but managers with solid man management and interpersonal skills can excel in this area. And it does kind of it's a bonus trait to have, in my opinion. Not everybody is good at it. Tenhag probably not the best at least in front of the camera, but I think that Tenhag has taken almost a step away from the interpersonal level and kind of said, this is the universal set of rules. This is what we do. He's almost taken that personal level out of it. But what do I know? I'm not in the dressing room. But there's a fine line between excellent man management, though, and trying to be everyone's friend. And I think you want to make sure that you really have a good understanding of where that line is. And yeah, it's not easy to navigate because it is going to look different. It's not just a straight line like some people have implemented. Sometimes it's like this, it goes around in this way. It's going to look different. So one of those is good management. The other can cause you to lose a bit of your authority in the dressing room by becoming too friendly with players. So it's delicate, and that's why it makes it a good trait to have, because if you're able to do that on that mental interpersonal level, it does set you apart. So what do you guys think of the man management aspect? Let me know what your thoughts are in the chat. Let me know in the comments if you're not able to catch this live. Brian Clough was also well known for his ability to engage with players and motivate them. Sir Alex, again, knew how to challenge and motivate each player. Again, sometimes benching them for a few matches to get them fired up. Over the course of a few years, Jurgen Klopp, had each player in his Liverpool squad just singing from the same hymn. At the dressing rooms united, everybody was pressing, everybody's relentless, everybody's carrying that energy every single match. It does take time, and it does take carefully building a squad. You not just want players who are fit enough to implement those tactics, but players who have the mentality to do it as well, motivating them to run through brick walls and whatnot. But it does take the right sort of manager at the end of the day to make it happen and guide them in that direction. And that's why it's on this list. Next up, rebuilding a squad and promoting youth. Some of this does have to do with how long a manager is at a squad or at a club, because if you're only there for a couple of years, there's not really much of a rebuild, and it's really difficult to judge that. But it also has to do with the nature of the club itself. Is your club a selling club that is good at recognizing talent, bringing them in for cheap and moving them on, like an Ajax, like a Dortmund, like a Brighton recently? And then you've got clubs who regularly produce those solid players as well. And so it's hard when those players get sold. It's hard to also, if you're at a club without a lot of money, to promote that youth and really trust in that. So if you can identify and develop youngsters to bring through the academy, it's a major plus. If you can undertake the process of losing several key players almost on a yearly basis, and then rebuilding a new squad and fighting and maintaining that status, that takes some skill as a manager. Sir Alex, for sure, had to build and rebuild several times. Famously the class of '92, he sold a lot of big players, your Kanchelskis and whatnot, your Inces, and then brought in these youngsters, and famously was told, you can't win anything with kids. And it's a balance. He promoted the kids, but he also had the personality at the club and the older players to help guide them through and look out for them as well. When those guys came through and went, and he had to rebuild another squad. Sir Alex has had to rebuild squads over and over again, and that's why he's such a respected manager. Brian Clough had to do the same thing. Erik tenhag, especially at Ajax, Ajax gets picked apart pretty much every single year. It hasn't been so much in the last year or so, but after they went on that terrific run, they lost pretty much their best players. De Ligt went, De Jong went, Van de Beek went. We picked Lissandro from them. They lost Edson Alvarez. Urian Timber's gone. I think Brian Brobby just left as well. Ajax are known for doing that. They're basically a talent factory. But to do what Ten Hag did, in spite of losing some of his best players on a regular basis, is a big deal. Arsene Wenger even went through a lot of squad rebuilds at Arsenal as well. So when you're at a club long, like I said, that does play a role. But you're only at that club for a long time if you're a good manager and you can navigate having to lose players and build squads again. So that's why it is on my list, especially the youth promotion. If you can, like Ten Hag is regularly bringing through young players. Sir Alex did it all the time. Liverpool have done it recently with Trent and like Harvey Elliott and whatnot. Like if you can do that, it doesn't mean you need to be built on that. But if you can do that, not only does that, especially United, is that part of the club's DNA. The fans love that, but it shows other young players that this is a club that believes in youth. This is a club where I can have a chance, a pathway to the first team, like we've seen recently this summer. But from the ownership side, it also saves you some money, and it can make you some money in the long run. Not that we care as much about that as fans, but if we're in a financial situation, it helps to have some good young players. That's why we just sold a couple this summer at United as well. So moving on. Getting the most from players and adapting to crises and excelling with a small budget. Now, this is a big thing as well for managers, rotating, finding a way to get results with players who may not be the best in the squad is a rare talent, squeezing blood from a stone kind of thing. Or older players, I would count that as well. It's also about finding a way to navigate these injury crises like United had last year. We won the FA Cup despite, the injury crisis that we found ourselves in as well. Obviously, we finished 8th, but that was still a big deal. Now, furthermore, managers who can get results while working with smaller budgets and typically smaller squads, because when you have a small budget, you don't have the depth, the quality and depth of some of the big squads. So then when you're balancing different competitions, it does become hard. So managers who can do that are a rare, rare breed. Sir Alex used guys like, and this isn't a disrespect, I'm just pointing out the examples, your John O'Shea's, your Wes Browns, your Andersons, your Tom Cleverleys. We won trophies with these guys. Just saying. But Mauricio Pochettino, he didn't have a huge budget at Spurs, if you remember. Like, people look at Harry Kane or like the players they brought in. They only brought in players when they sold Gareth Bale, and they didn't do a great job of bringing in those players. I think Christian Eriksen is probably the best one that they've had. So Tottenham have not had a huge budget, but Mauricio Pochettino did very well. He got them to second place in the league in the 16-17 season, and he did make it to a Champions League final, and he did it by bringing through some young players, guys like Harry Winks, things like that, had a role to play under Mauricio Pochettino. And so it does help when you have Harry Kane, who came through the youth ranks as well, but he still did it. So Mourinho, Jose Mourinho's Porto team is another one. They weren't a rich club. They weren't filled with stars, but he got them records in their domestic league in terms of points and wins and home records as well. But he also won the Champions League with Porto. It's a big deal. I'd also put Julian Nagelsmann in here as well for what he did at Hoffenheim when he was literally not even 30 years old yet. Saved Hoffenheim from relegation, and then the following year guided them to a 4th place finish and a spot in the Champions League. That's a big deal for a young manager to take a team like that, to implement some new tactics, some new fresh ideas, to come in and do that. That is a big deal. That is getting the most from players. That is excelling with a small budget. That's all tactics, all motivation. Nagelsmann is very, very big on the interpersonal side of things as well. And so Nagelsmann probably be up there at the top of the list as far as that criteria is concerned. But Nagelsmann's got a long way to go before he gets to this next criteria, and that is longevity at the top level. That's my next one. You don't see it as much anymore, but there was a time when managers could be at a club for well over a decade, right? Sir Alex was at United for 26 years. Arsene Wenger managed Arsenal for 22 years. The most recent one is probably Diego Simeone. He's been at Atletico Madrid for, 11, 12 years now. Pep Guardiola looks set. If he runs out his contract, he will be at City for like 9 years. Klopp was at Liverpool for like 9 years. And that's, something to be said. That's partly being a good manager, partly the club kind of backing you and believing you and focused on building something. Danny, what we got here, Dan? Not only did Pep cheat, but he convinced the whole of Europe to play his game so he could easily beat you with it. His dream squads over the year. Yeah. This is the thing. It's always hard for me with Pep because I do think Pep has tactics. But the problem for me with Pep, where he's always been limited, is that his tactics only work when he has the best players. If Pep has never had to build a squad, he's never had to rely on youth. He's never had to do that. He's always had clubs that have had the best players who are already winning things, mind you, as well. And so that's why Pep is not high on the top of my list when it comes to greatest managers ever. People are going to look at trophies and whatnot and look at what he's won. Yeah. But again, as you're saying, we don't know if Pep cheated. We're still going to wait and find that out. We can all have our speculations. So I'm not going to say yes or no. But the question remains, would he have done that had he had to rebuild and work with young players, work with a small budget? Would he have done that if he didn't have a blank checkbook everywhere he's gone, kind of thing? And allegedly, would he be able to do that if the City hadn't been able to do what they did? So that'll come. We'll find that out hopefully this month, what happens there. But on longevity, so it's not simply enough to just stay at a club that long. Like, longevity also means continuing to challenge for titles, win silverware. You also have to adapt to changes in the sport as the years go by, with your tactics, with your technology, with your nutrition, all that stuff, your science. Fergie did this very well. He changed his backroom staff a few times to stay up to date and keep things fresh. He rebuilt this squad many, many times. And this is what helped him really just kind of stay on top of things. He introduced a lot of nutritional and fitness stuff as well. People forget about that. Ancelotti is probably the best current example, in my opinion. He's just won. Ancelotti's won like 5 or 6 Champions Leagues in a couple different leagues. So many league titles. Ancelotti, he's won too many trophies to count. But he doesn't look like slowing down. He's younger than I thought he was too. I thought he was in like his 70s. He's only like 65. Danny B says, smart thing to do though to get your inferior teams to copy you. I mean, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think Pep has that blank checkbook has really, I mean, I've said it before. Pep has pretty much bought new defenders every year because Pep almost has a whole new system each and every year he plays, and City just pretty much give him a checkbook to get the players to do it. It's like Pep has gotten to the point where he's so bored and he just comes up with new ways to play each season and then just asks City for those players to do it. He's almost trolling at a certain point. But when you're at City, when you're at Bayern, when you're at Barcelona, you can almost do that. So, yeah, I'll get some water. But I think that, I mean, he didn't originate a lot of his system, especially his early City. He took what Johan Cruyff did and kind of tweaked it a little bit, and then he kind of brought it to the Premier League in some ways, but he wasn't even really the first person to do that. It's just the first like modern person to do that. So I think that Pep has also shown that he's not unbeatable as well. I mean, Ollie had his number because Ollie didn't try to outplay Pep with his own system. Ollie just said, hey, if you're going to play high line, we're going to counterattack. So it is what it is. But I do hear you a little bit on that one, Danny. I don't watch enough. I don't follow enough Man City and Pep Guardiola during his time at Bayern and Barcelona to really know the ins and outs of that. So I will defer to your better judgment on that one. But yeah, longevity, Pep's been doing it a while. Ancelotti's probably the best example I can give in the modern game of that longevity. Before that, it probably would have been Arsene Wenger and Fergie. But next up, innovative and changing, impacting the sport on the whole, like in some way, shape, or form. This is being so kind of just new and fresh and pioneering in some of your ideas and your approach that it changes the sport in some ways, but also just innovating as well. So this can mean tactics. This can mean favoring a formation that hasn't been used a whole lot. Even pioneering aspects of the sport, like I said, that change the sport as a whole moving forward. So kind of like Arsene Wenger coming in and, you know, really spearheading a top to bottom change in the nutrition and the fitness aspect of Arsenal when he came to mind. Sir Alex, too, when he was appointed in the first few years, immediately expanded United's medical staff and nutrition personnel as well, because he could see that that was going to be a big thing. Danny says this only season they didn't spend big. Yeah, they don't have to spend big, City. I mean, they spent a lot of money. They spent 100 on Jack Grealish, 100 on Guardiola. They brought in Holland and stuff. They don't have to spend big, but they have. So I would argue too in terms of being innovative and changing the sport. I would put Ralph Ragnick's name in there as well for his really. I mean, he's called the godfather of the gegenpress. He introduced that kind of aggressive counter-pressing system, and it has been influential and inspiring for so many managers, especially in the Bundesliga over the years. I mean, Jurgen Klopp cites him as doing Nagelsmann, Thomas Tuchel. All these guys took their cues from that. Who else comes to mind in terms of managers who have been innovative, who have pretty much changed the game? You could maybe argue Claudio Ranieri's title-winning Leicester side with going back to that 4-4-2. While the 4-4-2 is not innovative, nobody was using it really a whole lot anymore, and he kind of brought it back, and it was just attack kind of thing. I've seen some people argue that Bielsa, but I think Bielsa's system has a bit more flaws and vulnerability than it does pros, in my opinion. But let me know what you think in terms of innovation, in terms of managers who have changed the sport, changed the game with their ideas as well. Let me know what you think. You could argue maybe Conte, kind of bringing back the three at the back and making that a popular thing for a while. A lot of managers started doing it. You let me know. I'm here for your thoughts. My allergies are so bad today. And my sinuses are only going to get worse because it's supposed to drop like 20 degrees tomorrow. So that's fun. So moving on. If you haven't yet liked the video, please do so. Subscribe if you're new. So finally, this is my last one. The last one that I came up with. Again, this doesn't mean that this is all there is. I want you guys to get involved in the chat, get involved in the comments. Let me know any criteria that maybe I haven't gone over with yet that maybe you think is important. But I have my last one. I saved the biggie for last. And it's sort of the whole point of management and really the whole point of sports in general, right? And that is results and trophies. This is probably the top criteria you're going to need as a manager. This is why managers are hired. The goal is to win trophies, but it's definitely not easy. And this is where you start to look at some of your elite level managers in the game. Your Alex Fergusons, your Carlo Ancelottis, your Pep Guardiolas, and your Jose Mourinho's, the four guys on the thumbnail. Who else springs to mind when you think of trophies? Zinedine Zidane. I mean, people say that Zidane inherited a stacked Madrid squad, but winning 3 Champions Leagues in a row is like, who does that? There's something like that's not an easy task. You do have to be semi half decent, right, to win 3 Champions Leagues in a row. And it's not like they got easy draws in those runs either. They played some hard teams to get there. Conte's got a lot of trophies as well, a lot of leagues. Got a Premier League, couple of Serie A's as well, a lot of the domestic trophies too. Thomas Tuchel's got a Champions League, league titles, domestic trophies as well. Thomas Tuchel's one up there. I would throw in there Louis van Gaal as well, because people forget because a lot of people are younger, but Louis van Gaal was doing big things at Ajax and Bayern Munich when he was there. I think that some people maybe don't rate certain leagues as high, so maybe they don't count those, which is why some people don't rate Erik tenhag. But Erik tenhag has a lot of Eredivisie titles and KNVB Cups as well with Ajax. And I've told you the other day, if you go ahead and click that video in the description on is Erik tenhag a bad manager, Ajax weren't winning for several years before he got there, and he started getting them trophies and trophies and trophies. Louis van Gaal was the same thing. So for some people, they rate the leagues differently. Like some people don't rate the Portuguese league very highly, but now all of a sudden everybody is all over Porto's managers, like everybody was all over Ruben Amorim the last couple of years as well. So people will change their goalposts because that's just what people do, where it's normal. But let me know who else springs to mind when it thinks of trophies. Is that your top criteria? You need to be winning, and that's what makes you a good manager? Or do you prefer man management? Are you like some of the Ten Hag outers who shift from trophies to style of play? I want to see a style of play. And I've said the other day, I agree to that with a certain degree, because having an effective, consistent style of play will probably get you closer to trophies if it's a good system, right? But you can't deny the fact that Ten Hag has won trophies in his first 2 years. And so Sven deserves a shout. Sven-Goran Eriksson, rest in peace if that's who you're talking about. But yeah, there's a lot of them out there. I could have gone through so many. Luis Enrique probably up there. Hansi Flick, I think, deserves a bit of a shout as well. But Luis Enrique getting in trouble, Barcelona, not bad. I really like Luis Enrique, so we could throw him on that list too. There's a lot of them out there. There are managers who are like really good managers, like Graham Potter. Very, very good. There's that book back here, Edge by Ben Littleton, a whole chapter on Graham Potter. Really good off the pitch, team building and whatnot, unity in the dressing room, challenging players, individual player development. Not a whole lot to show for it in terms of trophies and whatnot. But does that mean Graham Potter is not good? Just depends on what you prioritize and what you value. De Zerbi, we saw Roberto De Zerbi's first season at Brighton, very good, implemented that really good playing out from the back system, sucking the opposition press in, then playing over it, got them the Champions League and whatnot, struggled a bit, or got them into Europe, struggled a bit though. So it's hard. Everybody's got their own personal preferences. And again, there's not a right or wrong. So as you consider these criteria that I've kind of gone through today, think back to the original question, what makes a good manager? How do you prioritize this criteria? What is most important to you? How do they relate to each other? Like we talked about, tactics and trophies, interchangeable, things like that. Or how do they depend on each other sometimes? How many of these criteria do you think one manager really needs to have to be successful? I've seen, again, people move the goalposts throughout the years, going from wanting trophies to claiming that the style of play, the more important, like I said, the most recent example being Ten Hag. But this is how you spot an agenda when the goalposts keep changing after each each demand is met, and then they move on to the next one. But like I said, I hear both sides. I do think that having a clear and effective style of play is necessary as well. So maybe you want a complete 9 out of 10 satisfaction in each of these criteria for your manager. You want a manager who does it all. Maybe you think 6 out of 7 or 6 or 7 out of 10 in the majority of some of these criteria is good enough. Or maybe you want an elite manager who is like your Mourinho, who's a 10 out of 10 in terms of trophies, but in some of the other things, maybe like a 4 or 5 out of 10. There are the managers like that. You have managers who are very good at tactically, but maybe haven't won a whole lot. You've got managers who are good tactically, but maybe haven't been around long enough to instill that longevity. Maybe you have managers who have really good tactics, but maybe not good man management. There's all sorts of different combinations and different iterations of these. And again, it's not up to me. There's not even a right and wrong. It's all about what you think, what your preferences are in terms of managers. But there's something to be said about the successful elite managers and the traits they possess. Sometimes it is about looking at this from a reverse, looking at the managers who have won it all and have done it, and looking at what traits and what criteria they possess themselves. What did Sir Alex Ferguson possess? We kind of talked about that, big moments, trophies, man management, motivating, how to, that's one of them. Jose, successful, he wins trophies, he just does it, he's just breaks things down, he's very analytical, he knows what results he can expect to have against certain opponents, things like that. And honestly, these traits are, they're not just limited to football, they're easily transferable to other industries. There's a reason that Harvard's business school appointed Sir Alex Ferguson to a teaching position in 2014. I think it was like the business of sport and media entertainment or something like that. Read Sir Alex's biographies and you'll see what I'm talking about. But whether you're running a business yourself that has nothing to do with sport, or if you're coaching or you're a football manager, a lot of these traits are universal. They can make or break an organization. They can make or break a manager. They can make employees want to stick around and fight for somebody, or they can make them want to look for the next job on LinkedIn like the next day. It just depends on the person. It's really hard. I own a business myself. It's not easy all the time to find that balance between looking out for your employees, but also looking out for the business and the clients that you work for as well. It's very difficult to balance all that. And so I don't envy football managers, though. There's a lot of millions and millions of dollars and millions of fans that they've got to also keep in mind as well. So, but that's just some of the criteria I'm going through on what makes a good football manager. Again, there's not a right or wrong. They're just different items that I thought that really contribute to a manager's overall career, their overall success, a club success during that time. But you get your thoughts in. Did I miss any? Where do you see some of these managers? Are the managers I didn't, mention that you think deserve a shout? I know it's Danny threw one in there, Sven. Let me know what you think. Don't forget, when it's time to get your next jersey and you want to go to Google Shop so you don't have to spend $150 on a player issue from your club's website, I put a link in the description. They did hook me up with a $5 off your order code as a thank you guys for helping this channel grow. We're on the road to 2K subscribers. We're at just over 1,200K right now. We're getting there, and I did promise some more giveaways when we get there. So keep an eye out. The best way to get involved and enter for those giveaways is just to get involved in the channel, get involved in the chat, leave some comments, help the channel grow. And again, it's all about me appreciating you guys. So go do that. Like the video if you haven't yet. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Keep a lookout for more videos. Every day I'll pop back up to get your thoughts on something going on with United. If anything does break and pop up today in the news United related, I will of course be back here to get your thoughts. Until then, thank you everybody for stopping by today. I know it was a little off schedule today, but it just is what it is. That's how it works out some days. So again, thanks, Danny. Thanks, Nick. Thank you, everybody in advance for getting involved in the chat and the comments. I will see you guys on the next one. Take it easy.